Ron Rivera has won the AP Coach of the Year award twice. Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry combined have won it the same amount of times as Ron Rivera has. Just in case you need any indication as why Coach of the Year is a really stupid award. Welcome everybody to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared 9 representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about the breaking news that happened earlier today. Ron Rivera officially fired as the head coach of the Washington Commanders. It's a move that a lot of people saw coming. 4 years with the Commanders, made the playoffs in 2020 as the division champions, although they were probably the worst playoff team in the history of the NFL, at the very least if you exclude the strike-shorted 1982 season. And this year, Washington was the second worst team in football, only better than the Carolina Panthers. They started the season 2-0, but ever since then, they ended the year 4-13, having lost 13 of their final 15 games, and now Ron Rivera officially fired. Look, it's the right move. It's the right move. I don't think anyone's surprised by this. I don't think anyone's shocked by this, especially when you lose 8 straight games, you're going to get canned. And Ron Rivera, good riddance to him. He was a horrible head coach who handled things the complete wrong way. He was completely clueless, completely in over his head. He was way worse than he was in Carolina. He should have been fired last year when they lost, and he admitted that he didn't know that the Commanders could miss the playoffs with the loss. He didn't know that. I mean, that's your one job as a coach. You got to know the playoff scenarios. You got to know that if you lose, you're out. You got to know the stakes of the game. He didn't know that. And then you have this offseason where he somehow survived, got Eric Bieniemy as his offensive coordinator, and then he basically threw Eric Bieniemy under the bus in training camp. Ron Rivera was asked about Eric Bieniemy and his style and how different it is, and Ron Rivera said that the players were struggling with Bieniemy. Rivera said, yeah, they have struggled with it. And one of the biggest things is, I had a number of guys come to me and I said, hey, just go talk to him. So you had a guy that was thrown his offense coordinator under the bus. Then he fired Jack Del Rio as the scapegoat so he could take control of the defense and do some more coaching. And he only got worse. He fired Del Rio after the debacle against the Cowboys where they lost 45-10. And then over the final 5 games, the defense laid an egg all 5 times. They allowed 45 against Miami, 28 against the Rams, 30 against the Jets, 27 against the Niners, 38 against the Cowboys. They were averaging well over 30 points per game allowed over the final 5 games, ending the season with the worst defense in football from a points allowed perspective, which is obviously just abysmal. And then, the week before the Cowboys game, he blamed the ownership for being in this position. He said about his time with Washington, for 3.5 years I've been managing. About the last 5 weeks I've been coaching. So he said that the first 3.5 years, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault that the Commanders were not that good, because he was doing so many different things that he didn't think he would have to do in Washington. And now over the last 5 weeks, he's been able to coach. So that's why it's been better. But it hasn't been. It's been worse. You took control of the defense got worse. Even if we take you at your word that the last 5 weeks you've been coaching, you still lost all those games. You still lost every single game in that stretch. I'll tell you this much. I know the management under Dan Snyder was incompetent. I know that. I know that it was a terrible situation. But I can promise you this, ownership was not talking to you during the game about some of the worst in-game management decisions you can possibly make. Seriously, there was no worse coach in football this year than Ron Rivera. There was a reason why he was on dumb decisions just about every single week. You had the game against the Bears, where he had some horrible clock management at the end of the first half, where he refused to take a timeout to try and get the ball back. That did not work. You had the decision against the Giants, where the Giants would have had 4th down in field goal range, well in field goal range, and Rivera said, I'm going to accept the penalty, push them back 10 yards, even though they were in the red zone, so it's not like it makes a difference. And then the Giants ended up getting the first down and scoring on that drive, so good job there. You had the horrible game against the Cowboys, maybe the worst coach game by any coach this season, where he had the punt in plus territory on 4th and 1 for some bizarre reason, and then he repeated the same mistake that he did in that game against Chicago with not wanting to get the ball back at the end of the first half. You also had on top of that, you had the game against the Rams where it took 3 whole minutes to score from the 1-yard line, and there was no sense of urgency, and he was intent on not scoring before the 2-minute warning, even though you needed to. You had all of that, and you had his horrible timeout management in the game against the Jets where he could have gotten the ball back if he just used his timeouts properly, and spoiler alert, he did not do that. There are so many dumb decisions on Ron Rivera. I'll leave a link to every single one of those in the description if you do want to watch any of those. He was a terrible head coach. He took no accountability, no responsibility whatsoever. This move was a long time coming. I don't know what the Commanders are going to get, but I know this much. They could not go on with Ron Rivera as the man in charge. Good riddance to him. He will not be getting a 3rd stint as a head coach anytime soon. nor does he deserve one. When you don't take accountability, when you get worse each year, and when you're a defensive mastermind, apparently, and your defense is the worst in football by a comfortable margin, yeah, you deserve to go. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And go to Jaguar Gear 9, my main channel, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, Jaguar Gear 9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.